It's funny how the smallest things become the loudest alarms. For me, it was a door. Just a regular door. But when I walked past room 408 that night, something in my gut twisted. I wasn't supposed to be on that floor. I wasn't even supposed to be in that hotel. But life, with its weird sense of humor, had other plans. Let me backtrack a bit. My name is Greg, 38, and up until 3 weeks ago, I was married to a woman named Tessa. We lived in Denver, where she worked as a dance instructor and I ran a mobile mechanic business, basically fixing cars where they broke down. Nothing fancy, but I was damn good at it, and people appreciated that I came to them. Tessa, on the other hand, had charisma oozing out of her. People were drawn to her, like she had some invisible magnet in her spine. We'd been married for 8 years. No kids. Not by choice, just it didn't happen. Honestly, we were good. Not perfect, but solid. At least that's what I thought. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our Sunday nights with trashy movies and takeout from that Thai place on Blake Street. Life was fine. Predictable. Quiet. That is, until the convention. Tessa had been invited to teach a series of workshops at a regional dance conference in Albuquerque. I remember her being unusually giddy about it, and at the time, I chalked it up to her being excited about a professional opportunity. The kind of gig that gave her exposure, maybe even led to bigger things. She wanted to go alone, said it would be easier, fewer distractions. Fair enough. I stayed behind and picked up a few extra appointments to keep myself busy. And I swear to God, I wouldn't have gone down there at all if it weren't for the parcel. A client had left a toolbox in the back of my van and begged me to bring it down to Albuquerque, where he was working an event as a supplier. I figured it was a good excuse to surprise Tessa, maybe take her out to dinner, show her I supported her hustle. No drama, just a little detour. But when I got to the hotel and asked the front desk to ring her room, the girl at the counter gave me a blank look. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't have a Tessa Morgan registered here." I blinked. Maybe she booked under her maiden name? "Try Tessa Lemoyne," I said. Lemoyne was her mother's last name, which she used on social media sometimes. Still nothing. I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe she was staying elsewhere and just teaching at the hotel. Maybe the event organizers put her up in a partner hotel. I shot her a text, "Hey babe, in town for a drop-off. Wanna grab dinner tonight? And when to meet my client?" She didn't reply. 2 hours later, still nothing. That night, I decided to drop by the hotel again. Maybe she was back. Maybe the front desk messed up earlier. The lobby was buzzing with people in lanyards and dance gear. I was about to leave when I saw her. Or at least I thought I did. She stepped out of the elevator on the far side of the lobby, wearing a long beige trench coat over what looked like black tights. Her hair was pinned up, messy in a way that made it look deliberate. She was laughing. And she wasn't alone. The guy next to her was maybe mid-30s, built like someone who spends too much time in the gym. They didn't hold hands or anything, but they were close. Way too close for two people who were just instructors. He whispered something in her ear, and she tilted her head, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. I stayed hidden behind one of those giant potted plants near the concierge desk. Felt ridiculous, like a sitcom cliché. But my feet wouldn't move. They walked toward the elevators, giggling, oblivious. He pressed the button. I could see his keycard in his hand. The light dinged, the doors opened, and they stepped in together. Now here's where things got really weird. As I made my way toward the elevator, telling myself to let it go, I passed the housekeeping cart. It was unattended. A bundle of clean linen sat on top. A few feet away, room 408. The door was slightly ajar. That's the door I mentioned. The door that shouldn't have been open. I stopped. Listened. Nothing. I nudged it wider, expecting an empty room, maybe catching a housekeeper mid-turnover. Instead, I saw Tessa's scarf, or her favorite one, the one with the little pineapples, draped over the chair by the bed. And on the nightstand, next to a bottle of white wine, was a used protection wrapper. I backed out like I had just walked into a crime scene. My stomach was a brick. My pulse was in my ears. I stood in the hallway, frozen, trying to piece it together. The elevator dinged again, and this time it was someone else stepping out. I ducked around the corner and left the hotel without saying a word. That was the moment everything shifted. My wife was here. She hadn't told me where she was staying. She didn't answer my texts. She was in a room with another man. The ride back to my motel was silent, not because I didn't want to scream, but because there was nothing left to say. Everything inside me was caving in, and I didn't even know where to start. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white and my palms were sweaty. The air in the car felt thick, and my chest felt like it was trying to collapse in on itself. It wasn't just about seeing the scarf or the wine or the wrapper. It was the lie. The effort it took her to cover it up. The way she laughed with him like I never existed. That's what got to me. That's what stayed in my head and looped like a broken record. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the scratchy motel sheet staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it clunk every few rotations like it was falling apart too. I kept thinking of her face. The way she used to look at me when I surprised her with something small. A coffee in the middle of her class. A back rub after her shift. How many of those looks were fake? How long had she been lying to my face while I was out there under cars with grease up to my elbows trying to build us a future? It wasn't just the cheating. It was the disrespect. The pure, calculated disrespect. I couldn't just accuse her without knowing more. That would give her a chance to lie, twist it, manipulate it like she always did when something didn't go her way. So the next morning, I went back to the hotel, walked into the lobby with my head down like just another conference attendee. I knew her workshop started at 10 a.m. because she had bragged about it the week before like it was some big milestone in her career. I slipped into the back of the room, acting like I belonged there. Watching her up on stage teaching those steps, moving confidently, joking with the audience, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. I wanted to drag her off that platform and demand the truth in front of everyone. But I didn't. I just stood there, calm on the outside, while inside it felt like I was being boiled alive. After the session ended, she was surrounded by people. Mostly women, a few guys. She hugged them, laughed with them, handed out business cards like she was some celebrity. Then I saw him. The guy from the elevator. He leaned casually against the sidewall, waiting. She spotted him, gave a quick smile, and wrapped up her little circle of admirers. Then they left together, casually, without a care in the world. I followed. Quiet. Distant enough to avoid suspicion, close enough not to lose them. They stopped at a coffee shop across the street. He bought her a drink. They sat at a small table outside, and she reached over and touched his hand while she talked. He leaned in. She giggled. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and typed something. A second later, my phone buzzed. Workshop went great. Miss you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. She was sitting right there, holding some other guy's hand, and lying to me in real time. I looked up from the message and stared at her through the glass. She was still smiling. Still lying. I didn't confront her right away. I waited. I needed evidence. Real, solid, irrefutable proof. So I followed them again. They walked back to the hotel like nothing mattered. I stayed far enough back to not be seen, used the stairwell while they took the elevator, and reached their floor just as they entered room 408. I didn't try the door this time. I didn't need to. I heard her laugh. I heard the music playing inside. Then I heard the bed squeak. That was enough. I turned around and walked straight back to my car, my fists clenched so tight they left marks on my palms. Back at the motel, I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I didn't even sit down. I just opened my laptop, loaded up the dashcam footage from my van, rewound it to when I parked outside the hotel the first time, and hit record. I edited together a timeline. Her going into the hotel. Him going in right after. Them leaving together in the morning. I pulled old texts, photos, her call logs from our shared cloud account. Everything I could gather without her realizing it. I made copies. Flash drive, cloud, private email. I labeled the folder Tessa's Truth and locked it. The next morning, I checked out of the motel, packed my stuff, and drove home without telling her. She wouldn't notice anyway. She thought I was 200 miles away changing a distributor cap on a client's truck. I let her keep believing that. Let her enjoy one last day with him. She got back late Sunday night, just like she said she would. She walked in like nothing happened, tossed her bag on the couch, and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek like a damn roommate. Tired, she said. Long weekend. I'm gonna shower. And just like that, she disappeared into the bathroom. I sat on the couch, staring at her bag. Still zipped up. Still full of the same filth she brought back from Albuquerque. When she came out in her robe and asked what I wanted for dinner, I didn't answer. I just looked at her and said, "We need to talk." She froze. That fake smile slipped off her face so fast it was like watching a mask fall. Her voice trembled a little. What about? I didn't answer. I just reached for the flash drive on the table and handed it to her. Start with this. Then we'll talk. Her hands shook as she took it. And in that moment, I saw fear. Not guilt. Not shame. Fear. Good. She was finally catching up. Tessa sat on the edge of the bed, her face pale, eyes locked on the flash drive like it might explode. She didn't say a word at first, just stared at it, then at me, then back down. I waited. I wasn't going to break the silence for her. She'd been running the show for long enough. She was the one lying, the one sneaking around, the one pretending to care while someone else in a hotel room had stayed away. I had done my part. I'd waited. I'd watched. I'd stayed calm. Now it was her turn to squirm. She cleared her throat, but didn't look at me. What's on it? Her voice was so quiet it almost didn't register. Everything, I said. Your little weekend. The guy. The texts. The hotel. You name it. She swallowed, the kind of swallow you make when your throat's dry from panic. Still, she didn't open the file. She just held it between her fingers like she didn't know what to do next. I could see the excuses loading up behind her eyes. The gears spinning. She was calculating. Tessa never reacted emotionally, not unless it helped her get what she wanted. Every tear she ever cried in front of me had a purpose. This was no different. Can we talk first? She asked. Before I look at this? I shrugged. Talk. She took a deep breath and finally looked me in the eyes. I didn't plan for this to happen. It was unexpected. We just connected. And I didn't sleep with him. I laughed. It wasn't funny, but I laughed anyway. You're seriously going to start with that? It's the truth. No, it's not. I followed you, Tessa. I was in Albuquerque. I saw you with him. I saw the hotel room. I heard enough. You followed me? She snapped, her voice suddenly louder. You stalked me. Call it whatever you want. You lied about where you were staying. You ignored my texts. You came home and looked me in the face like nothing happened. You really think I was just going to sit back and hope you told me the truth eventually? She stood up then, arms crossed, trying to flip the narrative like she always did when things didn't go her way. You had no right. That's controlling. That's insane, Greg. And sleep with someone else behind my back isn't? I snapped back, my voice rising now. Don't try to make this about me. You're the one who cheated. You're the one who lied. Don't stand there and act like I'm the bad guy because I didn't let you keep getting away with it. She opened her mouth like she was going to argue, but nothing came out. Just silence. She sat back down, shoulders slumping. It wasn't supposed to get serious. I stared at her. So it was just for fun? That makes it better. I don't know, she said. I was feeling stuck. Like we were in a routine and nothing ever changed. He made me feel seen. The word made me want to break something. Seen? I've been here every day. Working. Fixing cars. Paying bills. You needed someone to see you? You live in a house with someone who's been breaking his back for you, and you went looking for attention like a teenager. Her eyes filled with tears. Whether they were real or for show, I couldn't tell. I didn't mean to hurt you. Bullshit, I said. You just didn't think you'd get caught. That's all this is. She looked down, wiped her face, and for a second, I thought she might actually apologize. But instead, she said something that pissed me off more than anything else she had said so far. I didn't sleep with him. That part's still true. No, it's not. I swear. I grabbed my phone, opened the folder I had backed up, and tapped on the screenshot of her in that hotel room. Her scarf. The wine. The guy's jacket hanging on the chair. I held it up and said, "Tell me again how you didn't sleep with him." She flinched, but didn't look away. We kissed. We messed around. But I stopped it before it went that far. You were in the room for over an hour. We talked. That's all. You really expect me to believe that? After everything I just showed you? I don't know what you want from me, Greg, she said, her voice shaky now. You want me to say I'm a terrible person? Fine. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But we've been drifting apart for a long time. That sentence made me laugh again, louder this time. No, Tessa. You've been drifting. I've been right here the whole time. You decided we were done. I was scared. Of what? Of ending things. Of hurting you. Of breaking the life we built. I shook my head. You already broke it. The second you let him in that room, you ended it. You just didn't tell me. We sat in silence for a long time. Her breathing was uneven, her hands trembling. I stayed still. I had nothing else to say. There was no forgiveness coming. No understanding. This wasn't a rough patch or a misunderstanding. This was betrayal, planned, carried out, and then denied until the very end. Finally, I stood up. You need to leave. Greg. I'm serious. Pack a bag. Go stay with a friend. Go stay with your dance buddy if he'll still have you. I don't care. You're not sleeping in this house tonight. She opened her mouth to argue again, but then stopped. She looked around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. Our house. Our life. What she had just destroyed. She didn't cry this time. She just nodded, got up, and walked into the bedroom without another word. I sat back down on the couch, leaned forward with my elbows on my knees, and let the silence swallow the rest of the night. Tessa was gone by morning. She left quietly, sometime around 5 or 6. I didn't hear the front door, didn't hear her dragging her bag across the floor, didn't hear anything. I just walked into the kitchen and saw the coffee pot untouched and a note folded next to the sink that said, "I'm sorry." I didn't read the rest of it. I tossed it in the trash without opening it. Whatever she had to say at that point didn't matter. She had her chance to be honest. She used it to lie. Now it was my turn. I didn't want a screaming match or to drag our mess into the open like a high school breakup. I didn't need to go nuclear, but I also wasn't going to roll over and let her walk away with her dignity intact. She'd wrecked our marriage, humiliated me, and tried to gaslight her way out of it. She deserved to feel it. Not just from me, but from everyone who thought she was this perfect, hard-working, charismatic dance instructor. That image she protected so carefully was going to come apart the same way she tore apart our marriage, piece by piece. The first thing I did was call my friend Nate, a guy I'd known since high school who now worked in digital marketing and event promotions. He owed me more favors than he could count, and when I told him what happened, he didn't hesitate. I sent him every screenshot, every photo, the timeline, the hotel confirmation emails, even the footage from my van's dash cam. Nate had a quiet way of making things go public without them looking like revenge. He was smart like that. He knew how to make things feel like they just leaked. By noon, he had set up a website. Nothing fancy. Just a simple layout with the title, Behind the Curtain, and underneath it, a timeline of Tessa's affair. No slander. No exaggeration. Just the facts. He made sure her name wasn't in the URL, but it didn't need to be. Her face was there in the pictures, her text in plain view, and the story made it easy enough for anyone local to figure out who it was. Within an hour, it had been shared on a community Facebook group, then on a local forum where people traded gossip and rants about neighborhood politics. It didn't take long before her dance school's page was tagged. Someone asked if it was the same Tessa who taught their kid ballet. At the same time, I emailed a separate, redacted version of the evidence to her employer, without the website. Just a plain email stating that I was informing them of her conduct during a professional work trip that involved a student's parent who also happened to be married, based on social media connections I found. I didn't even know if that part was true, but I had enough images to make them uncomfortable. I signed off the email with my name, added a contact number, and made it very clear I wasn't looking for drama, just accountability. I didn't stop there. I made sure every mutual friend who ever told me Tessa's such a great catch got the link anonymously. A few old friends of hers too, especially the ones I knew she tried to impress. I didn't add commentary. I let the evidence speak for itself. There's nothing worse for someone like Tessa than losing control of the narrative. She had always managed her image so carefully, social media updates that looked effortless, casual humble brags about her workshops, captions that made our life look like a rom-com. I didn't need to scream or make accusations. I just let people see the truth. By evening, I started getting the messages. Some from people I hadn't talked to in years. A couple from her coworkers. One from a woman I didn't know who apparently had been warned by Tessa to stay away from her territory at the dance studio. They were all variations of the same theme. I can't believe it. This is insane. You didn't deserve that. I didn't reply to any of them. I wasn't doing it for sympathy. I didn't want a pity party. I just wanted her to feel what it was like to watch everything she built turn to trash because of her own actions. Around 10 that night, she called. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Greg, we need to talk." I let it sit. 10 minutes later, another one. "You need to take that stuff down. People at work saw it. This is going too far." I laughed. This is going too far? She disappeared for a weekend, came back with someone else's touch still fresh on her, and lied about it while expecting things to go back to normal. But me sharing the truth was too far? I finally replied with one line. Actions have consequences. No more texts came after that. Maybe she understood. Maybe she was figuring out her next move. I didn't care. The next day, I met with a lawyer. I brought a printed file of everything I had gathered and handed it over. The lawyer flipped through it, nodding, then said something that stuck with me. "You're in a strong position. She's going to try to negotiate this down. Don't agree to anything right away." Good. I wasn't in a rush. I wanted to make sure she knew I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't a fool. I wasn't going to be her fallback plan. She'd made her choice, and now I was making mine. 3 days passed without a word from her. No calls. No messages. No unexpected knocks on the door. Just silence. I thought maybe she got the point. Maybe she was ashamed enough to finally disappear and figure out her next lie without dragging me into it again. But then, Thursday evening, she showed up. She didn't call ahead. Didn't warn me. Just pulled into the driveway like she still had a place here. I watched her through the blinds, standing there with her keys in her hand like she wasn't sure whether she should use them. After a minute of hesitation, she knocked. I opened the door, didn't say anything, just waited. She looked rough. Not messy or broken, but tired, drained, the kind of look people get when their life stops going the way they planned. Her makeup was faded, her hair pulled back in a rushed knot, and she wore one of those jackets she usually saved for errands, not appearances. I stepped aside and let her in without a word. We sat across from each other in the living room. No TV on. No music. Just the sound of her trying to think of what to say first. She stared at her hands for a while, then looked up. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't deserve this," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "You were right to do what you did." I didn't respond. I just waited. She needed to speak, and I wasn't going to interrupt. I had already said everything I needed to say. She was the one who needed to be honest now, if she was even capable of that anymore. She took a breath, like she was steadying herself. I didn't realize how much damage I caused. I didn't think. I don't know what I thought, Greg. I've been selfish. And stupid. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. You don't, I said, finally. She nodded like she was expecting it. I know. There was a long pause. She leaned back, rubbed her face, then looked around the room like she was remembering something. "I miss this place," she said. "I miss you. You missed your chance to appreciate it. I know that too." I didn't know if she came to fight, to beg, or to guilt me into something. But so far, she wasn't doing any of that. She was just sitting there, dealing with the wreckage, and I let her. She needed to sit in it. Feel it. Understand that you can't just tear someone's life apart and walk back in like you forgot your phone charger. "I wanted to ask you something," she said, finally making eye contact. "What now? What happens next? Are we just done? You think there's something left?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "I don't expect you to forgive me. But I also don't know how to live like a stranger after everything we've shared. I don't want to throw it all away. You already did." She didn't argue. Didn't protest. Just sat there, nodding again like she'd been doing it all day. "I'm not trying to make excuses," she said. "But I need to explain something. I know it won't fix anything, but maybe it'll make sense to you." I leaned back. "Say what you need to say. When we first met, I felt like I found someone who really saw me. You were solid. Reliable. You didn't bullshit me or try to impress me with fake charm. You were real. And I needed that. I still do. But somewhere along the way, I started looking for something else, something that made me feel different. So you threw away everything good for someone temporary?" I didn't plan to. It just kept going further than I thought it would. I kept lying because I didn't want to lose what I had here. I thought I could manage both, which was unbelievably stupid. And cruel. "Do you love him?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, I don't. It wasn't about love. Then it was just fun." She flinched, but didn't deny it. "It was about escaping. For a minute. I didn't think I was hurting you because I was stupid enough to believe it wasn't real. It was real for me." "I know." Another silence fell between us. The kind that isn't awkward, just necessary. We both knew we were at the end of something. She had come here hoping for something, but even she didn't know what. I think she needed permission to stop pretending. "I'm going to move out officially," she said. "Get my own place. Not just crash at a friend's. I'll make it easy. Whatever you want from the divorce, you can have it." "I already spoke to a lawyer," I said. "I figured." We sat a few minutes more. Then she stood up. "I'm sorry, Greg. I know that's not enough, and I know it doesn't fix anything. But I am." I didn't say anything. She waited, maybe hoping I'd say goodbye or give her some kind of closure, but I didn't. I just watched her walk to the door, hesitate for a second, then leave. That night, I sat alone in the same spot, looking at the space where she had just been. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was just done. Not bitter. Not broken. Just finished with a chapter that didn't deserve to keep going. 2 weeks passed after that last conversation, and not once did I consider reaching out to her. The silence wasn't hard. It wasn't forced. It felt natural, like the end of a contract that both sides had already stopped honoring long before the paperwork was signed. I didn't hear from her either, except through the lawyer who sent over her signature on the divorce forms. No delays. No arguments. No attempts to negotiate terms. She just signed and sent them back like she was just as ready to end this as I was. That made things easier, but it didn't take away the weight of everything that happened. I still woke up some mornings expecting her to be in the kitchen. I still caught myself listening for her car in the driveway out of habit. But there was no pain anymore, just routine emptying itself out, getting replaced with something new, something quieter. My friends found out, of course. A few of them already knew from the leak online. Some were shocked. Others pretended to be surprised but clearly weren't. They said all the right things. You deserve better. She messed up. You'll bounce back. I appreciated the effort, but none of them really got it. They didn't understand that what hurt the most wasn't the cheating, or even the lies. It was the fact that she did it without thinking I'd ever find out, like my feelings were so irrelevant they weren't even worth protecting. That was what stuck with me. That was what made me realize she wasn't the person I thought I'd married. I started packing up her things after I got the signed documents. Not out of spite, but because I wanted to close the door on it completely. I boxed everything, her books, her clothes, the photos she left behind, even the pair of dance shoes she forgot in the closet. I didn't throw anything away. I just stacked the boxes in the garage and sent her a text that said, "Your stuff's ready for pickup. Let me know when." She replied with a simple, "Thank you," and nothing else. That was the last message I ever got from her. I saw her once after that, by accident. I was leaving the grocery store, and she was walking in from the opposite end of the parking lot. She didn't see me. She looked thinner, paler. Her walk didn't have that bounce it used to. I stood there for a second, wondering if I should say anything, wave, acknowledge her. But I didn't. I just got in my truck and left. There was nothing to say anymore. We weren't married. We weren't friends. We were just two people who used to share a life, now living completely separate ones. A few people asked me if I'd ever take her back. If she begged, if she apologized harder, if she swore it was a one-time mistake. My answer was always the same. No. Because it wasn't about one mistake. It was about months of choices. Texts she sent when she thought I wasn't looking. Nights she stayed out lying to my face. Moments where she looked me in the eye and told me everything was fine while sneaking off to be with someone else. That kind of thing doesn't get fixed with apologies. It doesn't get patched up with therapy or time. Since the divorce, I've been getting my life back together in small ways. I cleaned out the house. Got rid of all the decor she picked that I never really liked. I started going to the gym again, not because I want to impress anyone, but because it feels good to do something just for myself. I even picked up a few weekend clients with car work, which has always been my favorite part of what I do. Fixing things. Actual things. Not relationships. Not people. Just machines that either run or don't. I'm not bitter. That's the one thing I didn't expect. I thought I'd come out of this hating her, angry at everything, looking for someone to blame. But I'm not. I'm just clear now. I see her for who she is, not who I thought she was. And I see myself a little clearer too. I spent years thinking love meant holding on through anything, sacrificing whatever it took to keep someone happy. But that's not love. That's just losing yourself slowly until there's nothing left. Now I know that if someone loves you, they don't look for ways to escape. They stay. They talk. They fight to fix things. Tessa didn't do any of that. She ran. She hid. She made her choice. And I made mine. People say moving on is hard. That it takes time. But for me, moving on just meant stopping. No more hoping. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering what I did wrong. The moment I stopped trying to understand her was the moment I started to understand myself. I deserve better. Not perfect. Not flawless. Just honest. Just someone who won't treat me like a backup plan when they get bored. And until I find that, or even if I don't, I'm good. I'm still standing. Still working. Still living. And that's enough for now.